In these videos, I'm going to give you just a real quick overview of the stuff that you'll see in the lessons that you work through online. And the point of this is not to teach you everything you need to know, because coding is sort of best learned through practice and seeing what works and what doesn't. And also with me there in person with you to ask questions and kind of go over things. But this is just to give you a sense of what you can expect and kind of clue you into the key things before they come up, so that when they do come up, you already have sort of an idea of what they're doing and why they're doing that. So without further ado, let's jump into the basics and organization of just how we set up and organize HTML and what it is. So HTML is used for coding and setting up websites, and it stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And you don't really need to know that per se. If you forget this in a week, it's not going to make a huge difference, but it is good to be exposed to it, and like when it comes up again later, you'll be familiar with it. The building blocks of HTML, like all the parts of HTML that you see on a website, are called elements. And they're generally three parts: an opening tag, the content of the element, and a closing tag. So if you want to see an example of this, kind of with the classic computer science, we'll start with a hello world. And so you have an opening tag, and that's everything within these brackets. Then you've got your content, which is everything between the opening and closing tag. Then you've got your closing tag, which is everything within those brackets, and you'll notice it has a backslash here, and that's what marks it as a closing tab. Tag, not tab. And so that's the basics of HTML. You'll see this over and over again, but you'll generally have an opening, content, and then a closing tag. So next, let's talk about organizing the HTML overall. When we're talking about kind of how things all relate to each other, we use family terms. So a nested, and nested is just the word we use for inside. You'll see that a lot. A nested element is a child to the outer element, and then an element with one with another element nested within it is the parent element to the inner one. And then you can extend this grandparent, grandchild, etc. So what you'll see here is H1, this is the child, because it's nested inside of P, and then the P is the parent tag. And you don't need to worry about what these tags do at the moment, just recognizing that it's inside the other. So that H1 and /H1, that's the child element, and the P, and this is missing a slash P, will be the parent element. Again, don't worry about what these are yet, just kind of getting the feel for how those are laid out. So HTML formatting. However you set up the HTML file, so that's where you actually write in all the code, that does not affect the formatting of the web page. So it can look all crazy and messy, and the web page will look totally different. But what that means is there are best practices for how we lay that out. If you have large elements, so it's an element that has a lot of content within between the tags, it's generally best to put tags on their own line. So you might see something like body, and then there's all this stuff in here, and then we see close body. And so because there was a lot inside this body element, we put the tags on their own line, so it's a little just easier to look through. Typically, we will indent child elements with 2 spaces. Again, none of these are required, but you get the idea. So if this body has a element inside like a P, we'll have it indented here, and then say it closes down here /P. You can see that it just helps when you look at it, and you'll see this in practice, and it'll kind of make sense there. And then finally, use comments to help explain. And you'll learn about how to format those, but it's basically just a special HTML tag that you put in, and then it won't show up on the website, but someone looking at it can say, oh, here's what this section of the web page is supposed to be out. And then finally, just some language. A website is made up of one or more web pages. So a web page is just one, like if you open it and you scroll around and anything you can do without actually clicking on anything, that's a web page. If you click and it takes you to something else, that's another web page. And then if you group all these together, you have a website. So if you think, for example, YouTube, each video on YouTube is on its own web page. Each channel where someone's got a bunch of links to videos is its own web page. But then YouTube as a whole is the website. So this is just the basics of HTML and kind of getting a feel for it. Like I said, as the best way to learn it is just by practice and looking at things. So you'll jump into the exercises, and I'm confident you'll pick things up pretty quickly here. But of course, if you have any questions, please ask. That's what I'm here for in class.